retired now, huh?
Yes.
How's that going?
Great.
Yeah?
I love retirement. That's the job I always wanted.
Yeah.
I'm just thrilled to be retired. I'm not bored at all. People ask about that. I think it helped that Eleanor was born about 2 weeks before I retired. And, it's wonderful to have. So then I had 3 grandkids. And if you've got grandkids, you don't have to worry about what you're going to do in retirement.
Yeah.
And it's all fun.
Yeah. That's crazy. I didn't realize it was 2 weeks.
Yeah.
But it seems like you guys keep busy. I've been staying here with my parents for the Hurricane Helene
Yes.
aftermath, and you have a little free library. You have these cats.
Yeah.
And you have all these flowers that you water. And
Yeah.
then you sit down there and you and Dad watch the show with your cats every night. It's pretty cute. It seems fun.
Yeah, cuddle with our cats. It is wonderful to wake up in the morning and think, what do I want to do today?
Yeah.
Not have to do all these things and prepare and go to work and do what somebody else wants you to do.
Yeah.
But what do I want to do? It's just wonderful. I hope it lasts 20 more years. That's what I'm hoping for.
Yeah. When is it time to call it quits? Like at some point, I feel like maybe when it just hurts too much to be alive. You know what I mean?
You mean quit work?
Well, just like I sometimes think like, how long do I want to live? And it's like,
how long do I want to live?
Yeah.
Well,
you going for 100?
Yeah, but as long as we can live, Barry and me both, in this house, if we can manage and live in this house, I'll go for 100.
Yeah.
If we have to move out of this house or if one of us dies, then, at some point, I'm not sure I'm going to want to be 100. But right now, life is so good and feels so good.
It does seem good here. It's a really nice place to be. It's really, we're lucky that we can be here.
Yeah.
We've just been hanging out and relaxing and,
and we love our house. I think we're just now getting it where we wanted it, where we always wanted it. We've lived here 51 years.
Crazy.
And Dad and I have been married, let's see, it'll be 54 years this December. And that's been good.
That's crazy. Yeah. I'm the only person I know that the house I was brought home from the hospital to is still the house.
Yes.
That you said there's one other person on the street that's the same people from.
Right.
But they haven't been here 50 years. You're probably the oldest. There's no way anyone's been on this street longer than you.
Well, no. The lady died already.
Okay.
And the guy's really pretty old, so yeah, I think they have been here longer.
There's one more person that's in the running.
That's barely making it.
Well, I hope you both make it.
Well, thank you.
Another 20 years. And
But
then he dies first. And you win.
When we were looking for houses, this one was in the process of being built. And we decided we wanted to get it. It cost $37,000.
Wow.
Which was, we were not sure we could do that. We were both working. I was a teacher and Barry was working as an engineer. But, we took the plunge and we knew when we bought it, or our plan was to always live here.
Yeah.
And I want to die in this house, and I'm glad you're recording this. I don't want to go to some home somewhere or die in the hospital or anything. I want to die here.
Yeah, you want to haunt this house, like you want to stay in it so the next people.
No, I didn't plan on doing that.
Yeah, because you had said that before COVID, you were actually kind of open to maybe staying in a nice retirement home.
Oh, yeah.
But then during COVID, those places became prisons.
Yes.
And it was no longer, I saw you really change your opinion about wanting to live in a nice retirement home.
That's right. Before COVID, we toured 3 different places. And we did the calculations, and we thought, okay, we can afford to live there, and they were really nice. Mm-hmm. COVID changed all that.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is crazy that this house was $30,000 in mid-70s. I mean, this is like
37
because it's huge.
It's expensive.
37, yeah.
37.
So it's what? How many square feet? Like thousands or something?
I guess it's 3,000 square feet, but part of it is a big garage.
Yeah.
So I don't know, 2,200 livable or something.
Yeah, I mean, what you're saying about retirement, like I don't need a job. Like your husband, my dad, really like for a long time having a job was kind of his identity. But I mean, there's just so much to do. You know, keeping up with the home, spending time with your family, going to the grocery store, doing all the chores, taking care of your cats, making art. I mean,
spending time with your grandkids.
Yeah,
that's important.
That's really nice.
And your kids, of course.
Yeah, yeah. I feel bad about. I know that someday I'm gonna miss my kids not being.
You will.
There. Like I know that I'm gonna miss it, but then sometimes it's just so much to have to just be the mom, dad, just the you know what I mean. So it's this weird conflict where like I get irritated by them sometimes, but I know that later I'm gonna regret being irritated, but I still can't not be irritated by the never-ending demands.
That's just being a real person. I mean,
yeah,
you have to get irritated with your kids. Everybody does. So
yeah, it's good being a grandparent, huh?
Oh, it's wonderful because you had all these things that you thought you were going to do with your kids, you know. And of course, life was really busy, and then you had to go back to work, and so you didn't do a lot of them. So it's like you're getting a second chance to do things with kids. And, you know, really, when there aren't kids around, life's not that, people don't laugh as much.
Yeah.
Life isn't as much fun.
Yeah.
So and then you get to go places like the Children's Museum. If you don't have any grandkids, you don't go there.
Yeah.
But, you know, you go to lots of places that are fun.
Yeah, even now as a dad, it's like we celebrate Christmas again, we do Halloween again, we go to museums, and we go to all these places that you don't go. Like when you have kids again, you get to enjoy all that stuff again.
Exactly.
But you have to be the one to provide for Christmas. You have to be, you know, so it's like
when
you're a kid, you get to just receive it all. But then when you're a grown up, you're like, oh, here come the holidays.
Yeah.
It's, I don't know. It's a double-edged sword. Yeah, I've told my kids are like, I tell them like, you know, my parents were like a little more strict with us than they are with you. I don't think they believe that, you know, the grandparents are like, you guys are so laid back and loose.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Well, we're better rested, you know. You just, when you're raising a family, and you know this, and you're working and you're trying to get all these things done and you're taking care of a house, it's just, you're just tired.
Yeah. Yeah. You're always just one, like getting your shirt caught on the drawer away from just losing it, you know?
Right. Always.
I don't know if that made sense, but
no,
just
exactly.
one, you're always just barely ready to start yelling at everybody.
Exactly.
That's what I appreciated about like doing stand up is I can get up and I say a lot of like horrible things, but it's like, it's not really how I feel, but it's like, you have to be so good and responsible as a dad that
I know
you need this place where you can kind of be more of a devil or something, you know?
Yes.
Because it's just trying to keep it together and be responsible. It's like if you get a few hours a week where you can just say whatever you want, that really helps.
Yeah.
Yeah. Grandpa's home.
Oh boy, good. Oh, I wanted to put in a good word for Grandpa. Mm-hmm. We've been married 54 years in December, and he's wonderful.
Yeah, he's good.
He really is.
He's all right.
No, he's more than all right.
Yeah.
He's great.
Trying not to cry?
Yep.
Let's see. Yeah, he's gonna come on next. And,
boy,
you can cry on the podcast if you want. It's okay.
Okay.
It wouldn't be an honest documentation of you if you didn't cry the whole time.
No, it would not with me. And while I'm crying, I'll just say, I love my 3 kids and my 5 grandkids so much. Now we can talk about other things, but really, if I had never gotten married and never had kids, I just can't imagine how dull life would be. It gives life meaning.
Yeah, I mean, I feel the same way. It's like I didn't really start even making money until I had kids.
Yeah.
So if I had made money before I had kids, I could travel. I could do so much. I have so much freedom and money, but I wouldn't trade it. I mean, it does give, like, it's just all the cliche stuff's true. It gives you meaning. It makes you less of just a narcissist or, you know, self-indulgent person.
You learn to be flexible.
Yeah.
If you have kids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think one of the hard things is you need to worry about the future of the planet and things, It's like if you didn't have kids, you're like, well, it just needs to be good for another 30 years.
Yeah.
But now you're like, oh man, my kids are going to have kids. Then the planet's got to still be like, have drinking water in 100 years. That gets a little stressful, but I guess that's good. It's good for us to care about future generations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You were talking about you had your kids a little bit later in life than we did. little bit.
Yeah.
How old were you when you had Eleanor?
I think I'm kind of similar to Dad. I think because I had my first kid when I was like, geez, I guess I was like 31 or 30. It's like just starting my 30s, and then and then we had planned to have our second kid in our mid 30s.
Okay, yeah.
And then as soon as we had a second kid, I got a second. I was like,
you didn't
no
plan
more
to
kids.
have any more.
No third kids.
I guess I had April when I was 28. You were 31,
mm-hmm.
and Megan was 34. But it was good that you got to do all you did before you had kids.
Oh, yeah.
Those overseas trips and all.
Oh, yeah. I even got to get married once before I...
Well, yeah, that's true. I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah.
But no kidding. That was great that you did that before you had to really settle down and get a 9-to-5 job.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it is crazy. Just doing that while you can. I mean, because I have a lot of my comedy friends now. The average comedy friend of mine is probably like about 30 now.
Yeah.
They're a good bit younger than me, but now a lot of them are like the age I was when I had kids. So it's kind of weird because I remember feeling like I was scared and not ready for it at that age. But it did force me to, like the last person I had on, William Baldwin, he was like, I don't know how you find time to do a podcast when you have kids and a job. And I was like, it was having kids really made me realize that I have so little time and it's so valuable. And that's really when I got more serious about, spending my time wisely.
Yes.
It's almost like when you're in your 20s and you have all this time, you're just like, let's just hang out at a bar until it closes.
Yeah. Right.
Let's just I didn't do as much, but now you go, man, I only have a few hours a week I can even spend on me. So it can actually help you. The scarcity of freedom and money and time, it kind of can help you. And it's kind of counterintuitive. But, I don't know. I am glad. I think I had kids at a good age. But sometimes I look at people that have kids when they're 20. Yeah. And you go, oh, your life's over. This is terrible. But then by the time they're 40, if their kids might be out of the house and on their own, and they're my age, and they're becoming grandparents. Yeah. Like Emily's, I guess, my sister-in-law, Chrissy, she's our age, and she's a grandma.
Oh, my gosh. Oh, my gosh.
Yeah. But then you get to be a great grandparent, too, if everybody, the people across the street from us, they all had kids when they were in their 20s. So there's a grandpa that's like, in his 40s or 50s. Yeah. And there's a great grandparent that's your age. So
yes.
Just different ways to do it.
Yeah, that is one thing. We probably will not see our great grandkids, and I
hope not.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I guess maybe like Connor or somebody could. Yeah. But I don't want my kids having kids anytime soon. No. Because I'm not raising. That's my greatest fear. In the world is those people who have to raise their kids have kids. And then they leave. You know what I'm talking about.
Yes, I do.
And then you're old, and you're not a grandparent who sees them when you want. You're like trying to raise them as your own kids.
Oh, I couldn't go through teenagers again. I'm sorry. I can't do that.
Yeah.
Well, you better lay down those rules and expectations now that you're not raising grandkids.
Yeah. Safe sex.
Just let them know.
Safe sex.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, don't have a kid till you're 30 and you kind of got your stuff together.
Yeah.
I was back in school
Yeah.
for a computer science degree, so it was a little more on track.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it does help you to be a little more mature. I think about the people I see at the park now with their children, and I'm always like, they're probably like 30 years old. I'm like, are you sure you're really old enough to be a parent?
Yeah.
Are you really watching your child?
Yeah.
Like, when you see young parents, you just wonder how they do it.
Yeah, there's the people across the street from us, I mean, they must be in their early 20s. They look so young and they have kids. And we saw like, there's like a bunch of what looked like teenagers in the yard. And we're like, do we need to run these teenagers off? Like, you get out of our neighborhood. But they were a bunch of parents, you know.
I know.
I mean, they look like, you know.
I know.
I mean, yeah, if you're in your early 20s, I could be your dad easily.
I know.
So it's, you know, it's getting... That is one of the interesting things about doing like the comedy stuff is there's all ages, you know, there's some people in their 60s and there's some people in their early 20s. So you got this community that's like real different ages, and it is kind of interesting it's good to hang out with people that are not your demographic, you know.
Right.
So I don't know.
I was really surprised when I started going and watching your comedies. Going to comedy clubs and watching you. There were people my age up there that were, you know, doing their bit. And then there were people that probably were less than 20, I would think. I was real surprised that people I thought they would all be in their 20s and 30s.
Yeah. It's nice when there's people that age.
Yeah.
One, because there's somebody older than me there. There's not many. But then it's a different perspective too. It's like you don't want to see the same just millennial after millennial just complaining about their trauma.
Yeah.
Their entitlements. You know, it's good to have a good mix. But yeah, I found I think the people that are older that are the best at it are the ones that like it keeps you kind of flexible, you know, if you're willing. Like I appreciate that about you and Dad. I think you guys have managed to keep changing, you know. Some people get to a certain age and they're like, that's how I feel about gay people. I decided in 1987, and I'm not changing. You know what I mean? Like it's good to be able to kind of update your worldview and your language. You know,
absolutely.
I mean, I imagine it just gets harder. I mean, I hear words at open mic that 20-year-olds say. I'm always like Googling expressions and words because people that are 23 will be like saying words and I'm like,
what does that mean?
Everyone's like ha ha ha, and I'm like, I don't know what that means, you know. I don't know what that meant. What do you think about that as far as like just trying to stay, you know, you get to a certain age and you kind of you know who you are and you know your lane, and it's like that's one of the nice things about getting older is you know who you are. We don't care as much about trying to be something else.
Yes, that I think is the key right there.
Yeah.
It's just, well, that's the way I am and that's the way I feel. And if you don't like it, it's okay with me, you know.
Yeah.
Goodbye. But really, it's okay. Yeah.
Yeah, it's exhausting to be a teenager and be trying to figure out who you are and, you know, be different, you know. It's kind of nice when you're just like, this is sort of who, I think I'm at a point where I'm like, this is sort of who I am.
Yes.
I've got that part figured out.
Right.
You know, now you just kind of have to stay healthy and stay alive. You get to middle age and you're like, okay, it's time to start thinking about your health more.
Yes.
Like that's when I really was like, I'm going to quit drinking because it's like, you can kind of see like it starts hurting.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, this could maybe be good for another 40 years if I take care of it.
Right. We all see the people that don't quit drinking and they're our age.
Yeah.
It doesn't turn out well.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. They tell you how old they are and you're like, oh, I thought you were like 20 years older.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm trying to kind of nip that stuff in the bud. But yeah, as far as getting older and you kind of know who you are more, but do you think about like trying to still learn new stuff or evolve, or I don't know, is that something?
You know, I think Dad's a whole lot better at that than me. He's always like, he's learning to speak Spanish now, you know, and I have no interest at all in working that hard to learn another language. I'm like, you know, well, how are you ever going to have time to use it? I mean, about the time you get Spanish under your belt, you'll be dead. So, you know, I just do what I want to do now. And for some strange reason, I want to have a little free library.
Yeah.
It's a hobby I just absolutely love. I love talking to people like my neighbors that I didn't know very well, or just some random person from out of state even that comes by, and asking them, well, what kind of books do you like? And then I just happen to have about 20 of those books in my house because we have stacks of books everywhere. But I just really enjoy that. So now I'm just doing things I like to do.
Yeah.
I walk with Priscilla sometimes. She's a great walking partner, and we usually end up walking about 3 miles. And
That's good. Keep taking those steps, you know?
Yeah.
That's a big one.
Yeah.
That's what I hear.
Yeah. I need to walk more, but anyway, just kind of doing what I want to do.
Yeah.
And thinking about things we can do with the grandkids, too. That's like we were going to go to the orchard until you all had your hurricane over there in North Carolina. Just, thinking about things you could do. This year we wanted to go to like the Grove Park Inn and see all the gingerbread houses and everything, and I actually made reservations, but I know they're closed now. We might have to put that off till next year, but just thinking of fun things
we love do. That. That's amazing. Yeah. That helps us. It's good for everybody.
Yeah.
When somebody else wants to take your kids out and do fun stuff with them and pay for it.
Yeah. Really.
All that.
Barry just remembers going to the orchard last year with your girls as one of the highlights, one of the best days of his life.
Yeah.
It's just so much fun to go places with them.
Yeah, you're not just drowning in kids all day, every day, so you can really be calculated about having like a really fun day or weekend with them, and then you can rest afterwards.
Yeah, and we love going to the beach with y'all every year.
Yeah.
That's one of the highlights of our life.
So
no, I just I'm not working real hard to learn to speak another language, or I'm in a book club because I enjoy that. I'm just doing what I enjoy doing every day.
Well, I think Dad's probably doing that stuff because he knows it's good for his brain.
Yes.
But I think the things that you're doing out of joy probably achieve the same end. Like if you're in a book club, like the different people coming by the house and you're socializing, it's almost like when you get shut up in the house and you don't, you only talk to the person, you only yell at your partner, know, and you don't go out and like interact. Oh, this person has mentioned a book I've never heard of, and just like new ideas, I can see how that would be a great way. I mean, I think that like the stand up, I started doing that because I wanted to be on stage and get attention. But now I'm like, just being in a room where I have friends who are transgender, who tell their experiences. And I know people that are 20 years younger, 20 years older. And you just sit there in the chair and these different perspectives just wash over you. And that year after year, that makes you different. You have this way broader worldview, whereas you could just be stuck. I could just be at home being like, I run the house the way I want, and I work with a bunch of other white dudes that are my age. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And you think you're living life, but you're just getting reinforced with the same stories and ideas. So I think, being in a book club or a little free library, anything you can do to kind of bring in, cross-pollinate different ideas and different people.
Right.
That really keeps you like mentally fit. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Oh.
So. Yeah, we have a little birthday club too, with it's Liz Herbies and Jeannie Gregory, and you know all of those people real well, and you know their kids, but and we get together for each other's birthdays and do things, and that's fun too.
Yeah,
really fun.
Birthdays get exciting again. It's like, hey, still alive.
Yeah, we joke all the time about we joke all the time about getting older. But we're happy about it, too.
Yeah.
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 We know each other's kids. And
yeah, one of the things I wanted to talk to you about was, like, the creative projects and stuff, too. That's, like, this podcast is usually, it can kind of be anything, but it's usually, like, talking about, it started with comedy, but it's also, like, music. I had an author on recently. And like you've always kind of been a creative person, I would say, like when I was a kid, you had a lot of projects. You would always... You had a big barrel of like walnut dye that you were making like baskets from the like the colonial era or something. You were like weaving.
Yes. Gosh, if only I could get one of my baskets out here and show you. But yes, I've always just loved arts and crafts, and so I made baskets, and I think you all kind of you were little, I think Mrs. Burleson let us go over to her house. She had a big walnut tree, and you all picked up walnuts, and we collected them all, and everybody had stained hands that day, I remember. But yeah, we made dye and naturally dyed the baskets that I made.
Was that like trying to be like a walnut dye to try to do it authentically? Like,
yes. Oh, yeah. You want to do it authentically.
Because that's like a thing now where people will try to be a blacksmith or something, and they'll try to only use the tools from. It's like, why would you make it that much harder on yourself?
I've learned you cannot make money doing things like that, like making baskets or being a blacksmith.
Oh, yeah. The same. This podcast, my albums, like I've learned you cannot make money.
I know.
But it's still worthwhile. But
yes, it is.
Don't be delusional that someone's going to give you a bunch of money for it.
Because people would ask me, so are you going to start selling your baskets now? And it's like, no, I don't want to sell them once I put all that time into it.
Yeah.
Absolutely not.
And you made those little dolls that you'd stain up with like coffee and stuff. You'd make like these
we sewed the little dolls. We went to Grandma's every summer, as you probably remember.
Oh, yeah.
Because you ran around the church so many times.
I tell my kids stories about that Tracy City, Tennessee. That was a place.
Yes.
Because we live in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, or you live still. We're in Oak Ridge, Tennessee right now. But it's a pretty liberal, bubble where there's like a bunch of people with PhDs and whatnot,
Yes.
Not that that's better or worse, but Tracy City was super rural.
It's the real world.
It was like, just very blue collar, and I remember as a kid going out there and just going to their like we went to the 4th of July parade and then this county fair, and there was like a pie eating contest. It was just like Southern thing. I thought I was Southern, but then I go out there and be like, this is the real South.
This is the real South. And oh my gosh, I miss going to Grandma's every summer, even now.
Those are good memories.
I really do. They were.
She got like 2 channels on the TV, so you couldn't you just had to be outside.
That's right. And Grandma had that garden with all those fresh vegetables and fruits, and she was a really good cook. And when I went there, it was like going to a bed and breakfast for me. It was just great. And I got to take all my arts and crafts projects, and sometimes April and I guess, made a lot of our dolls at Grandma's, Grandma was great. She is my role model.
Yeah. You're about to start crying again.
Grandma meant a lot to me.
Yeah, Grandma was awesome. She was hardcore.
She really was.
My great grandma. Yeah.
Yeah.
She was out there climbing trees and growing all her own vegetables. And
I mean, she was over 80, and I remember saying, "What have you been doing lately, Grandma?" And she said, "Well, yesterday I had to climb up in that apple tree and saw off some of those branches. They were just hanging too low." And I'm like, my gosh, you're like 82 years old. And she did all her gardening by herself. No plow or anything, just with a hoe.
Yeah.
She was amazing. An amazing person.
Yeah.
She lived through the Depression, and they did well. And my grandpa was he was a coal miner. And Grandma only worked when she wanted something, like she wanted to buy a piano so my mother could have piano lessons. So she worked in a shoe factory for a while and a shirt factory for a while. And or like when she wanted to get furniture for the living room, she would work a little while and get the money. And very extremely resourcul people.
Yeah. She's a pretty progressive lady, right?
Yes.
Like in the sense that she was real strong and just did the work and did what she wanted. She wasn't like, my husband tells me what to do and I stay in the kitchen, And this is like 100 years ago, more than that. She was born in 1902. Something. Yeah.
1902.
And she lived to be almost 100.
Yeah. She learned to drive. Let's see, my grandpa died when he was 60. And that's when Grandma went out and bought a car and learned to drive at 60.
Yeah.
She built a new house then.
Yeah.
She was very
She just had the attitude of like, I can do anything I put my mind to.
Yes.
Instead of like the self-conscious, self-doubter kind of thing,
Right. And she had only been to the 8th grade, and she decided she was going to get her high school GED, which she did. And we went to her high school graduation.
Oh, wow. How old was she at that?
Gosh. She was probably in her 60s, really.
Was she there with a bunch of people that were young?
Yeah.
She was like
They had their GED graduation. I mean, caps and gowns and everything with the high school when they had their graduation. The GED people did too. She was really something.
Yeah. So her husband.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. You go ahead.
I was going to say, her husband, you said, was a coal miner, huh?
Yes, he died of black lung.
Really? How old was he?
60.
Yeah. So he was just doing that, huh?
Yeah. That's a horrible
Sounds
job.
horrible. Yeah.
Yeah. He and his 6 brothers were all coal miners.
There's still places that are like, don't take away our coal because it's our jobs, right?
Yeah.
Isn't there still? Maybe it's better now. Maybe you don't have to. Maybe they give you a mask or something. It doesn't seem like anybody should ever want to work in coal.
No. Underground. It's horrible.
It sounds so horrible.
Horrible.
Yeah, so I think would you say like your mom, who was her daughter,
Yeah.
she kind of went a different direction. Maybe was not wanting to be so blue collary, right? She kind of wanted to be
Right.
a little more, I don't know, city or something.
Yeah, Grandma only had one child, which was my mother.
Yeah.
And Grandma and Grandpa really sacrificed a lot. I mean, they saved up the money. I think she got a scholarship to college.
Your mom.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then, both my Grandma and Grandpa had only gone to the 8th grade. And they were, my mother was really smart. And the teachers at her school said, you need to move into town. They didn't even live in Tracy City. They lived way out in the county.
There's like one room that all the kids were in, and they were just...
But they moved into the big city, which was Tracy City, so that she could go to the city schools. And she was one of the stars of the school, and she got a degree from the University of Alabama. And then she came here during the war, right after she got her degree, to
World
work
War
on the
II?
Manhattan Project.
Yeah.
And my dad had just gotten his degree from Villanova University up north, and he came here with his new college degree during the war, and that's how they met. So they were 2 very smart people.
Yeah.
And actually, I'm not sure. Well, I was going to say my father was the only one. He came from a family of 10 Irish Catholic that lived in Philadelphia, in the city. There were 10 children, and I think he was the only one that got a college degree. He was one of the younger ones, except his sister, Julia, went into the convent, became a nun when she was 18, and they sent her all the way through a PhD. She was as a nun.
Your dad's sister, your aunt, got a PhD as a nun?
Yes.
What was her PhD in?
Education.
Oh.
She was the principal of a school or the director of a Catholic school. So, yeah. So they were really smart people, but I think they were the only 2 that got a college degree.
Yeah. It's kind of weird, though, because they had a pretty turbulent, existence. It seemed like there was maybe a lot, like, I don't know, as I get older, I'm almost like, having more respect for keeping it rural, keeping it simple. Like,
yes.
I was always very much like, I want to move to Asheville. I want to like go to Europe. I want to be around liberal, what's culture, stuff like that.
Yeah.
But as I get older now, I start to, and I see the young people being like, you can't say it that way this week. And I see just the, part of me is like, like living out in the country and just learning how to do your own stuff. Like there's a simplicity. There's kind of a timeless strength in that. Like, it seemed like your grandma was just very self-confident, just was who she was. And then your mom, I don't know, maybe it's just that she was a different person, but you come into a city and you have a professional job and you have to like keep up with the Jones and all that. And then that can really take a toll on you, trying to keep up appearances and play the game.
I totally agree.
Yeah. So I'm kind of going the other direction a little more now too, where I'm kind of like, maybe the rural people who don't have all the fancy degrees are smarter and actually know more, and they know more of like the timeless kind of true things rather than the whatever is cool this year. Does that make sense?
That makes total sense. The guys that came here and They renovated our kitchen for us.
Yeah.
All live out in the county here. I'm trying to think. It might Frostbottom or Windrock or one of those places. Those guys, like if I thought as I got, they could do anything.
Yeah.
They absolutely could do anything. And we became friends with them. And they brought us steaks. Like once a year, they kill a cow and then they put the whole thing in the freezer. They had big gardens. They were bringing us vegetables. I thought if there was ever, a nuclear war or something, those will be the only people that were surviving.
Oh, for sure.
I would try to go out there and try to find the harnesses. They are totally self-sufficient. Yeah. If anything happened to the rest of us, they'd go right on growing their gardens, raising their cattle.
Yeah. So who's really smarter,
Yeah.
You got all these, opinions on independent films and, you can play all these jazz chords or whatever. It's but at the end of the day, and some apocalyptic...
Right.
It was interesting with Hurricane
survive.
Helene. Finally got a radio working, and I was listening to the radio stations, and it was all very rural.
Yes,
which I've never even listened to Kiss Country in my life, but it's you had all the people on there just getting together and networking and figuring things out in this kind of more rural, like you're saying. It's I was well, these folks in these communities would probably be a lot better off than the city of Asheville, but it seemed to me that all the political stuff was out the window and everybody was helping each other, and I'm that's good, because when it comes to the end of days, you want those country friends,
yes.
You don't want your snobby city friends are not going to be any help to you, you know what I mean? It's just, I don't know, things like that, just getting older and having kids and seeing how fast things are changing. I'm starting to kind of come back to that and being maybe great grandma had it all figured out just living out there.
Those people are survivors.
Yeah.
And I've heard some people that aren't from around here say, "Oh, those people in Appalachia." I mean, they didn't know that they were talking about my grandma. It was a college professor. They fall for anything. They're not very smart. Yeah. And I was like, hold on.
Yeah.
Those are the smartest people in the world.
Yeah.
They could only eat what they grew or what they killed. Totally self-sufficient, much smarter than you, college professor.
Yeah, totally.
So,
and very marginalized too. It's the way they'll find somebody for an interview for the news that everybody sees that says something dumb, and that'll be the clip they play. So it's this misrepresented.
Yeah, or they drive out to somewhere way in the middle of nowhere and find somebody that lives in a broken down cabin and has 10 children with no shoes on, and that is who they interview. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So what about your dad's parents? What was his side of the family like?
Let's see. My dad's, both of them were Irish Catholics, and we have the name of the person that, I guess she would have been a great-great-grandmother. Her last name was Scully, that came here from Ireland. They had it so hard over there. Yeah. They had the potato famine, and
was that around the early 1900s?
Oh, no, way before that, I think.
19th century?
Because probably my grandparents, my father's parents, were probably born in around 1900, around the turn of the century. So
you went back to the generation before.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, or maybe even before that.
So
anyway, they came over from Ireland.
Okay, yeah.
I'm not sure exactly where my father's father came from, somewhere in Ireland. But anyway, I guess during the Depression, my father's father had a job with the post office. So really, they were relatively well off, because he had a job, a federal job.
Yeah.
And so his wife stayed home and had 10 kids. And but those people, she was only, I think she was 4'10" or 4'11", a little bitty person. But boy, talking self-sufficient, smart people.
Yeah.
Yeah. But my dad, they had a pretty good life. They had a great big old Victorian house in Lansdowne, Pennsylvania. Yeah. And he said they had a pool table, which, I mean, you have to be pretty well off to have a pool table growing up.
It seems like back in the day you could have a more modest job and still have a lot of things. You know, like
that's right.
I don't know, people sometimes say like late stage capitalism, you know. So, I mean, you know, I hang out with a lot of liberal, you know, people like communists and people like that, which I'm not.
Oh my
you know, that doesn't describe me, but it's like this idea that, I mean, back then you could have some modest job, but you could still have a house. And like you said, a coal miner you could still have a house and eventually get a car. And now it's like, it feels like you can make a lot of money, but it's like impossible to get a house or, you know, get out of debt. It's kind of weird. You can buy like these little portable electronic devices really cheaply, and you can get all this stuff off Amazon cheap. But if you want to have a house or just big things like that, it's almost impossible now. So,
well, you know, those people back then were extremely frugal.
Yeah,
they did not
weren't going out
waste
to eat and,
even a penny.
Yeah.
I mean, both families, I would say. And I mean, they saved and they paid cash for everything, and they had no credit cards, and they helped each other out. And
you said Grandma had a paper, aluminum foil ball that she would.
Yes.
Every time there's any small piece of aluminum foil, she would put it in the ball.
Exactly.
Like
she had
waste nothing.
Rubber band ball.
Yeah.
She saved all of her plastic bags. I mean, and with the garden and all. I mean, they didn't spend a lot of money.
Right.
Although my mother said my grandfather, her father, had one of the first cars in Tracy City because they only had one child.
As a coal miner, he was able to buy one of the first cars.
Yes.
Yeah, that's crazy. You would think that, that would.
Yeah, because he only had one child, and almost everybody else. I mean, she had a billion cousins.
Kids are really expensive. That has not changed.
Yes, so I think that was the difference. But they didn't spend money. Except for the car, I guess.
Yeah, I wonder about that too, because like in Asheville, it's like in our neighborhood, it's like so many kids go to private school, and then it's like, well, we do all these special sports things where they're on some team and they have to drive. And you can almost start, like what I was saying about your mom coming to the city, and then you got to keep up with the Jones and all this stuff, and you're like, but a lot of those kids that have all the fancy stuff turn out real screwed up anyways. Right. Like it's like I'm always going like, how much money do you need to spend on your kid? What if you did just say like, go out in the yard and you have three outfits and you got to just go entertain yourself. Like that might make a better person than some kid that has a fancy like private school education. I just don't know that. There's this pressure sometimes, like now there's just so much that you're supposed to be doing for your kid all the time that can just, you're never going to do it all.
Yeah. Go out and ride your bike.
Yeah.
I noticed your kids do go out and ride their bike.
Yeah. It's like, they're like, I'm bored. And it's like, that's good for your, like it's good for your brain to rest, you know, like there only used to be TV on for kids like a few hours a day.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, and when you were a kid, even less. And now it's like, you can just endlessly stream whatever you want, so it's like, no, you should feel bored. Like, I'm sure that the generation we were talking about was bored a lot, and that was good for to rest your mind and to have to come up with weird games. Yeah. This podcast just kind of hops around all over the place.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's cool, though, to document some of that stuff, though. You talking about your family, because I think one of the coolest things you guys have done is you and Dad took that class where you wrote the stories, and I think that is like the coolest thing you've ever done. I mean, I'm kind of doing my own version of that right now, because now you can put a recording on the internet. But you guys you took a class with my old high school English teacher, Mrs. Toth, and you wrote. Those are the books we should really get like printed up.
Yes.
Dad wrote a book recently. It was great. It's kind of a summary of his life. But there's another book that you guys each wrote, and it was more like, instead of trying to summarize your whole life in order, you think of the times that are the most.
Oh, yeah.
And you wrote like a story about like watching, a dog, get chased by some guys, and just these like really memorable moments. Like, if you put those in a book, I mean, or, I should do it, or somebody should do it. I think that's just so cool, because
we could do that.
Because wouldn't you love it if like your mom and her mom and you had a book that you could read that's like, this is where you came from, and they're describing the stories. I mean, that's just
That's
so cool.
a really good idea you just came up with.
Yeah.
We'll take those memoirs. It was a memoir class.
Yeah.
And we'll put them in a
Memoirs,
book.
that's the word. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like if you and Dad, I think each one's like a chapter.
Yes,
you know,
right.
There's one about like Dad talking about how there's some guy that was bullying him, and his older brother and his friend beat him up. You know?
Yeah.
And it's just like if you put all those stories, you guys in a book and printed it up. I mean, that's such an amazing document. You know. And even if there's no internet or something, you can still like Hurricane Helene makes you appreciate when you have a hard copy of something.
Yes. Yeah. And like we do have those things printed up, but you're right. If you put it in a bound book, somebody's likely to keep it.
Yeah, and Dad figured out how to do that just last year with his book. So I mean, that would be a great thing. I would love to get that for Christmas from you, like the bound book of those stories, because I have them saved and I printed them out, but they're still just naked paper that you could spill something on, or they're not as protected.
You want Granddaddy Longlegs?
Yeah,
immortalized. Okay, good.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the kids would love to read those. I mean, it's interesting how the kids, I started telling them stories at night about my childhood, and I kind of was inspired by your memoirs, because I thought that was really cool. That you almost think, well, sit down and go, I was born then, and then I remember this. But it's more interesting to go think of a time with a really memorable.
Yes.
And then think of all the descriptive words like smells, touch, taste. So I started doing that with the bedtime stories with the kids, and I've been interested that they just love.
Yes.
Like, we love to hear stories like that.
Yes.
You'd almost think that with the tablets now, they'd be like, this is boring. But I'm like, they love this. It's so cool.
You know, something June always asks me is, tell me about a time when you were bad, Grandma, or when you got in trouble.
I know.
Tell me about one of those.
She loves that.
She loves hearing about the time the dinner was over and Mom put the brownies in the refrigerator and we weren't supposed to eat anymore, and I sneaked in there to get a brownie out, and I got caught absolutely red-handed,
Yeah, I think I know why she loves those stories.
Why?
It's because, kids, sometimes you worry, like, am I a bad kid? Is there something wrong with me? And when you hear that, like, Grandma
stole something.
She did some bad things when she was my age, and she turned out good. I have a few stories where I stole stuff, and I tell them.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember, there's one time Eric Brubaker came over, and he, like, had all the He-Man toys. He got all the toys, and, like, when it was time to leave, they were like, where are the rest of them? And I was like, I don't know. And they were like, and everyone was like, we know that they're here. I'm like, I don't know. And then they're like crying. And then eventually I'm like, showed that I had hidden it. And June loves that story. She's like, tell the story again where you tried to steal it. You got caught. You were ashamed. There's something about that.
Something else June said too, that, she's always, they love looking. I have these plastic bins underneath the beds where I have all these treasures, and that I probably should get rid of, but I never do. And she said, I tried to send some things home with you a couple times, and Emily said, look, we have a small house. Don't send
She wants to keep everything.
Yeah, don't send any more stuff home with them. We don't need that. So June one time said, Grandma, when you die, can we come to your house and get some of your stuff? And I said, sure, I want you to.
She's got to have her own house by then, because we don't.
That's right. That's what I'm counting on. In 20 years or more, when I die, she'll have her own bare
God,
apartment.
I hope so. God, I hope so. I hope we're not raising our kids with her at our house.
Yeah.
So help me God, it's my worst nightmare.
Oh, no. So anyway.
Losing a child, number one. Number two, they live with you forever, and their kids live with you forever.
That's what's happening next door, to tell you the truth.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, it happens.
They are moving because, well, never mind.
It's going on the internet. But we know people who know people.
That's why they're moving.
Yeah.
They're leaving
to escape hell. Yeah. Sure. Yeah, I mean.
He's 30 years old. He's not gone yet. So.
Yeah. I mean, I was saying it is a little nice. Like, I feel like when we come and stay with you guys or we go to the beach, there's kind of a part of me that just wants to go off in a room and like just read and be like, I should be hanging out with a family, but it's kind of the only time where I get to sort of be a little kid again.
Yes.
Because you're like, oh, we got dinner and we're hanging out with your kids. And it's like, you know, when the extended family's around, there's a part of me that just wants to go close the door and just lie down and just like stare at the ceiling because it's just so relentless all the time. And then when you guys are around, I almost get to be a kid again, where it's like, oh, somebody else is kind of taking care of things,
That's why I loved visiting Grandma.
Yeah.
She was cooking all those meals and cleaning up and everything. And
those were good memories in Tracy City, Tennessee. It's kind of weird how a lot of the stuff that I think there was probably even some times where I'm like, I don't want to go out there. I got all my stuff here.
I know.
And it's like that builds character, all that stereotypical stuff. But then you're like, oh, man, I'm so glad that I had to go be so uncomfortable. Yeah. Or, not that it was that uncomfortable, but just go live in a different culture.
Right.
A kid's always going to go, I want to stay with my video games. I don't want to go out to boring old grandma's house. But then the rest of your life, you have these rich memories about the Herdmans, those wild kids. So I tell my kids stories about them, and then I do this thing with my kids where I'm like, I tell them a story about my childhood, and it's true. And then if they like it, I'll tell it again, and I add a bunch of lies to it. So then it just keeps. And if the Herdmans are like shooting fire shotguns at each other or whatever, it's. But there's a lot of things in Tracy City, Tennessee that you can exaggerate, they can get really good. Just these wild, dirty kids on the other side of the fence.
Well, they were wild and dirty and they were shooting off fireworks.
Yeah. I guess that none of that was really even exaggerated.
No, they were the Herdmans over there.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I guess I was interested in talking about some of the other art stuff too. I guess another thing I remembered is you used to make me, like you just told June that your grandma could back then you wouldn't go to the store and buy something, but you'd show her a picture of a jacket you wanted and she would make it by hand.
Yes.
And June, she heard that and she keeps being like, did you know that Grandma's grandma could just make, she's just kind of like, because she's really into doing the hands-on stuff too. So I can tell that's almost like, tell me a story about when you stole. She's kind of like, I want to hear about that again and again and again, know. And I was like, yeah, Grandma, you used to make me like costumes, and that was fun too. I'd be like, I want to be Storm Shadow from G.I. Joe, and I'd show you pictures, and you'd get all the stuff and make a Halloween costume.
Yeah, it was my grandma that taught me how to sew on that treadle sewing machine that's in there in April's room now. But literally, to sew clothes, you have to have a pattern. Yeah. Well, my grandmother could make her own patterns. So there was this show called Dr. Kildare, and for some reason at Robertsville, Dr. Kildare jackets were very in style then, and I wanted one so much, and Mom said it was too much, and Grandma just watched that show one time to see what a Dr. Kildare jacket is, like a doctor's white coat.
Yeah, because you couldn't even record it. You had to just watch it and remember it.
No, she remembered, and she made her own pattern, and she made that for me. It looked just like everybody else's.
Really?
Yeah.
So the kids at school were like,
they thought I was rich and had a Dr. Kildare
There's
jacket.
some Cosby Show episode where like the sister Vanessa tries to do that with Theo. She's like, well, I can make you one of those, and it's all like, one sleeve is like
I used to sew a lot, but I never tried to make anybody's prom dress or wedding dress though.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's cool. Excuse me. Yeah, I think that's nice though that the creative stuff is really interesting. I wanted to ask when I talked to Dad too about that too. He would tell us bedtime stories and I guess now you guys are painting the rocks and doing the little free library. I mean, I think you guys have, this is kind of a little creative hub in the neighborhood where you can come get a book and see the flowers and get a hand painted rock with Ninja Turtles on it. It's pretty cool.
Now my grandma taught me how to plant flowers too.
Oh yeah?
Grow.
Yeah. It's pretty insane. I wish we could show the flowers here. It's like every day you water
Oh, yeah.
Do you know how much water it is per day?
It's a lot.
Yeah. I mean, that's okay. It's for flowers. You don't have to say, but
Yeah.
yeah, I can
And
see
you
some
know,
right now.
people ask that. Gosh, don't you have to put a lot of water on those plants? And I'm like, yeah, but it's worth it.
Yeah.
It makes me happy every time I look at the flowers. It just happiness washes over me. So it's all worth it. I think it's something that keeps me healthy, honestly.
Oh yeah, taking care of plants.
And you have to do it every day, and it's good for you.
Totally. I totally agree with that. Talking to your plants, absolutely.
Yeah. Actually,
is good for you and the plants. Like you just
kidding.
reminded me that like I don't have to go into the office because of the hurricane, but so I'm working remotely. But like I need to get somebody to water those plants.
Yeah.
Because I have these little plants in my cubicle that I put up and I water, and it's like it just kind of helps me stay sane in that space, just to kind of have to keep them alive and just not only be thinking about computer stuff, but
mental health.
Yeah, think about.
And pets are that way too.
Yeah. Dustin there.
You could pan there over to Justin.
He shouldn't be on that table, but I'm letting it slide because we're having a podcast.
It's not going to bother everything. Yeah, taking care of our kitty cats is they're very important to us at this age. If you don't have kids, maybe you need pets, for sure.
Oh, I get it. I mean, I can see that you guys are you're in your golden era with the cats, and every night you go down there and you sit there with your cats and watch your shows. It's nice, and you guys stuck it out. You stayed married. I think there's kind of like a lot of my friends in their 30s now are like I got married when I was in my 20s. When I was 22, too young. Got divorced like very shortly after that, and then got married again, kind of older and wiser. But so I got married first. But then I also got divorced first, because now a lot of the people that got married like in their late 20s or get divorced in their 30s, and there's kind of this like, this person, I'm not happy with this person. I'm going to find, and when you get to your 40s, you realize, oh man, like being single in your 40s, like there's no one left that's like, even if you were good by the time you're single in your 40s, trying to date on the internet apps.
Oh gosh,
you can't stay good because now everyone's like trying to swipe and find something better, and it's like you got to just find somebody that you can trust and rely upon. That's like there's really no, so you guys have been through all this stuff together for like over half a century, and you're watching your shows with your cats. I mean, that's sweet. There's like aren't you glad you like stuck it out? 'Cause there's always those times where you're like, should I be with this asshole like this?
Oh, so glad, because you do go through rough times, and I think after you've been married like 10 or 15 years, you're thinking, I kind of like that infatuation stage. Boy, wouldn't it be fun to go through that infatuation dating stage again? Oh my gosh, I'm so glad we're still married.
Yeah, I don't ever want to go on a date with that sounds horrible. To try to like,
it's so artificial.
Start over with somebody again, and then go through the stage where somebody's showing you their best side and then find out what they're really like.
Right,
It's like,
all of us have
thanks.
have a fake side and a real side. Yeah, and somebody you can absolutely trust with your life, and you know that you can.
Yeah, I have a bit about that. There's like, when you get to your 40s, that's like the sexiest thing in the world is just somebody you can trust that'll do the things they say they're going to do, because it's like it doesn't matter what else somebody has going on. If they don't have that, it's not going to be trust. Really is the long-term thing that matters the most. All this cliche stuff you hear when you're young, but then you get to your middle age and you're like, okay, that's all true.
Yes, it is all true. My friends and I were just talking about, like, when you're young, you're basing a lot of your choosing of your spouse on how they look or something. Yeah. Oh man, if you had to do it, I mean, that wouldn't even be a factor. Yeah. If going through it another time, which I'm never going to ever look for another spouse.
If anything, go for the ugly person, because they're going to love you forever.
Oh, yeah. Somebody who won't leave no matter
what. The supermodel's always going to have, there's going to be some line of other people trying to, be like, oh, you could do better.
Yeah. No kidding. It's just your criteria. I just feel so lucky that I married somebody that really was the way I thought he was, because you don't really know how
you really don't
till after you live with him for a long time.
Yeah, it's true.
But it turned out he was true blue and exactly what I thought he was. And
Yeah.
only better, really.
Yeah, I mean, you
Better
guys
than I
are
thought.
both just like, good people in the sense that you
Yeah.
like if you say you're gonna do something, you do
Yeah,
it. Like
right.
nobody's perfect, but just there's people that have parents that are like, yeah, I'll be there for you at the thing, and then they just don't come. It's like
Yes.
so, and then that just goes. You're like, oh, I guess that's how people are, and that just kind of ruins your life because you don't,
Yeah.
you don't expect that. So yeah, I appreciate that you guys are
Yeah.
reliable people.
I appreciate that you're reliable too.
Yeah.
You and Emily and the girls.
Yeah, Emily is that way.
Yeah,
She's
she
very
is.
good. She's very
She's
trustworthy,
a great
reliable
daughter-in-law,
person. Yeah.
really. Absolutely.
And like you
Sean-
said, it's like you just meet somebody, you start a family with them. You don't, you're like, and then you find out they are what they said they're going to be. It's like, well, that's lucky because
Yes,
you
it is.
really don't know.
No.
Because I've had it go the other way too, where it's like times get hard, and it's like, well, okay. I actually feel like being this other person for a while, and you're
Yeah.
like, oh wait, what?
Who are you?
Yeah. So
Yeah, and Sean's wonderful too. I wanted to say I'm
Oh, yeah.
very, very, very happy
Oh,
with the
yeah.
spouses you and April have.
Yeah.
Oh, so happy.
yeah, I already think about that with my kids. I'm like, man, they're probably gonna have like shitty boyfriends or whatever, whatever. Just hopefully they don't marry somebody or start have
Oh.
kids. There's really like, don't have kids with someone that's not a good person because then you're with that person forever.
Yes.
I guess once you like get a house with somebody or have kids with somebody and then you find out you're not compatible with them, you still have to interface with that person until you die or they die. And
Yeah.
that's,
Every family occasion, the weddings and
yeah.
the births of the grandkids, they're gonna be there.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, I try not to have judgment about that stuff either because, I had a pretty stable, you guys give me a pretty stable childhood. So I think it's easier for me to be trustworthy and reliable than maybe for some people too. So try not to have judgment about it. There's Dustin.
Here, Dustin.
He's on the podcast a lot. He'll run by. I was doing this podcast from the house at first, but then that was getting to be too much in the house. So we've been at the library. But if you
Yeah, I
watch,
noticed
if you
that.
watch some of the ones at the house, Dustin will
Yeah.
he's in the podcast a lot.
Oh, he may get in this one.
Um,
He's a good old cat.
Yeah. Well, would you believe we've been talking for an hour and 5 minutes?
Oh gosh. Yeah, no, I wouldn't believe it. This has been wonderful.
Yeah,
I
this has
really
been good.
wasn't sure at all I
Yeah.
wanted to do this, but it has been wonderful.
That's nice. Yeah, it's common for people when they sit down to be on it
Yeah.
to look nervous and unsure.
Yes.
But then I think every person I've had on after 5 or 10 minutes, they just start talking and
Yeah.
it's good. So it's
Yeah.
kind of interesting. This is my 54th episode.
Whoa.
So I've done this a lot of times. So it's been cool to see. There's never been a case where it's like we didn't have something to talk about or the nerves lasted. It's like when you sit down and start talking with people, it just works out. And it's almost like if you don't, the podcast is a trick to actually sit down and have a conversation. 'Cause
Yes.
if you don't schedule it, you go, yeah, we should talk sometime. And then
Right.
the years pass and you never.
Not a real deep conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's
So-
been great to have the opportunity.
Yeah.
to do
And you should
this.
come on again sometime. We can
Yeah.
do it again, like
Okay.
at the beach or some other time.
And I want you to have time with Barry too. So
Okay, yeah.
we better switch over to Barry.
All right. Well, thank you, Mom. I love you.
I love you too, Brian.
Bye.
Bye.